I went through a conservative phase in early high school. I lived in the buckle of the Bible Belt, and lib-owning compilations were on the rise. But something changed my mind mid-teens, where I took more advanced classes in school, read more independently, and shed my teenage angst to become a much more left-leaning individual. Back then, I was still the same attention-hungry pseudo-academic that I still am. I liked to run my mouth about how much better capitalism is than socialism, the value of completely unrestricted gun laws, how feminism is a joke, and other gateway drugs to the alt-right pipeline. The only reason I'm okay with admitting that this was me at 13 is because I've since thrown away that yellow snake flag, and I've gone full lib. The alt-right is notoriously closed-minded, afraid of change, and averse to reasoning if it doesn't confirm their biases. And if you are a conservative, that might sound familiar because that's exactly what people say about liberals. It's exactly what I would have said when I was 13. Only now I'm a more lived and wizened and better read individual. And back then I was doing what I suspect most Republican lawmakers also do, which is just regurgitating the YouTube entertainment news content that I was always consuming. Most notably, this guy. To prove to you how long it's been since I've given this guy the time of day, I had to use ChatGPT to try to remember his name because I actually couldn't recall it. Paul Joseph Watson. Basest cracker on the internet. This guy put out videos all the time. He owned libs like a motherfucker. He was like LeBron for angsty teen boys in middle America. There's one video I remember rewatching over and over and over so I could memorize his argument in case I was ever walking the streets of Oklahoma and someone wanted to engage in a duel of economic theory. For the first time in a decade, I remembered that this existed, so I'm going to live react to it. And I'm going to go in with an open mind, because an open mind is what got me out of this way of thinking, and maybe an open mind is what's going to get me back into it as a more mature adult. Before we watch this, I'm just going to define a couple of terms so that we understand what we're talking about. Capitalism is defined as an economic system in which private individuals or businesses, rather than the government, own and control the factors of production. Okay, meaning that a government, democratic or not, sort of has no influence one way or another about how much people get paid, how much things cost, etc., etc. It's all supposed to be just driven by market demand, okay? Socialism. Unlike capitalism, socialist governments are involved in many aspects of the economy. The goal of socialism is to put more control in the hands of the public and reduce the power of corporations, which, if I'm remembering correctly, is a word that does come up a lot in this video, so I'm excited to see what happens. I'm not going to make a judgment call one way or another. I'm just saying those are the agreed upon ways that we define these two terms that we're about to be talking about in this video. If I remember correctly, he might say communism or Marxism because in these people's heads, that's all the same thing.
This past weekend, hundreds of thousands of people utilized one of capitalism's greatest achievements, the smartphone, to send the hashtag #ResistCapitalism trending worldwide on Twitter.
Okay, it's funny because that's actually always the first go-to thing, right? It's like, oh, you're gonna tweet about capitalism. Well, didn't your phone come from capitalism? That's a big assumption to make right at the start of the video, is that capitalism is the thing that makes products, which isn't true. People make products, right? And people create organizations, and sometimes those organizations are governments through research, etc., and that's how things get made.
The bourgeois and their racist, sexist capitalism must be purged. Cis white males will be the first against the wall. #ResistCapitalism.
Okay, this is another thing that really will activate a fan base. It's cherry picking an example for what an argument might be that you're about to disagree with. And so you choose the stupidest one. This is a super extremist point of view being put over this image to create a picture of the people who are going to disagree with him in this video. That's just sort of how I'm analyzing his rhetoric. And maybe what was appealing to me when I was a kid.
Have enough tech innovation and resources for everyone globally to work 4 hours a week and pursue life, art, hobbies. #ResistCapitalism.
True.
Dear mom's basement dwelling communists, if you actually did resist capitalism with any degree of success, the following would not exist. Twitter, the iPhone you're tweeting #ResistCapitalism from, the internet. Here's the truth about capitalism. It's the single greatest force in history to alleviate suffering, bring billions of people out of poverty, and create healthier, more prosperous societies and higher living standards for all.
Hey, I don't know, you know? I used to watch this video a lot, so I feel like I have a pretty good idea, but let's see what he says.
They confuse capitalism with corporatism.
Oh, right. That's the whole delineating thing. Okay. So again, he's going to make up some definitions that I don't know are completely agreed upon.
Corporatism is the opposite of free market capitalism because it depends on collusion between well-connected large corporations and the state.
Holy shit, you're so close. You're so close. If you agree with this, right, that sort of collusion is a bad thing, and you also can get behind the idea that these companies that collude the most, like weapons manufacturers, giant tech companies, are genuinely the ones doing the most scientific research and the most tech innovation that in the beginning of the video he said was a capitalism thing. So what I would argue is that right now he's defining corporatism with what people would say is the risk of capitalism, okay? His idea of capitalism is very, very idealistic and doesn't take into account about 90% of economic theory.
Socialists constantly call for government to impose more regulations on big corporations, but big corporations actually lobby for more government regulation.
That's not true. Again, I'm like, where is he cherry picking these examples? I've been watching for the past 6 months a made-up government agency slashing the budget all over the place, mostly in favor of the companies run by the guy who's in charge of that organization. That's what's happening now. That's what's been happening since Reagan.
Government regulation helps big corporations strangle smaller competitors.
Does it?
Capitalism is about the free exchange of goods and services. A competitive market creates quality because businesses fail if they don't please the consumer.
People create capitalist logic through the demand for goods and services, and very seldom talk about the labor market. A company that's only upheld by not being able to pay their employees a lot really shouldn't be in business. They can't afford their employees, right? And of course, companies that are bigger are going to be putting more of a stranglehold around the average hourly worker. And because collusion is a thing and has been a thing for a very long time, and it's been getting worse and worse and worse, the middle class is disappearing. The hourly worker is getting paid less and less and less. So yes, there is a dawn of streaming services, but there's also a lot of people who really don't even make enough money for groceries.
Capitalism isn't the problem. Corporatism is the problem.
That's true, but because of the context of all of history, the end game of what he's calling capitalism is corporatism. I'll admit that what he's talking about is that a perfectly free market between like a small group of individual businesses, obviously no one needs to step in on that. Nowadays, companies need to be regulated. We already know. Like, look up Cesar Chavez. People have died in order to make sure that workers are protected against companies because companies naturally are going to be inclined to exploit them and make more money for the people at the top. That's market demand.
Socialism is toxic to a healthy society because it punishes success and rewards failure.
It's also so funny, this argument that socialism is supposed to punish people for being wealthy. Imagine the social services that we could have if billionaires were taxed relatively exactly the same as we were. Get out from under the rock that you live in. You'll realize that relative to the average worker, a billionaire pays nothing in taxes. And I assume what he would say to that is like, well, that's what I'm talking about. That's corporatism. That's, public collusion. And it's like, someone needs to stop that. Anytime someone suggests some sort of solution, like there should be a minimum wage, or like if we pay for healthcare, people will be more productive. It's always shut down with like, oh, you just want to fucking reward people for being lazy? People should get what they earned because you can't trust companies to make sure that it's fair. Obviously. I remember when I was a kid, I thought, and this is what grown adults think right now, is that socialism is a government mandate that all GDP, all the money that's produced in this country has to be just divided by the amount of people and then perfectly split up. It's kind of like the picture that people have in their heads. I feel like as I grew up, I understood that there were more nuances to keeping a general society safe. I'll chip in for street signs. I'll chip in if a kid that I don't even know gets to be educated. An educated society and a healthy society is good for everybody. We cannot trust capitalism with making sure that that's what happens. They're going to keep colluding.
Socialism extorts money from the successful and gives it to the lazy.
It's 2013.
I remember laughing my ass off at this. Like, don't you think like a veteran needs disability?
The wealth that allows you to buy computers, smartphones, cars, go on nice holidays, and eat nice food was all created by capitalism.
Sure, markets are involved anytime a product is involved. That doesn't mean that capitalism is the reason that you can go on vacation.
We'd all be a lot wealthier and happier if it wasn't for governments, socialists, and corporatists trying to curtail free market capitalism.
But here's a big mistake that he made, okay? He just lumped together socialists and corporatists. When, as we know from our definition, and even from his definition, those aren't the same thing. But what he's doing rhetorically is he's saying that socialism is sort of a gateway to corporatism, when its definition is to try to stop that from happening. That's why low-key sometimes he sounds like a socialist. He just doesn't know what he's talking about.
680 million people have escaped poverty in China thanks to capitalism. And it's a similar situation in India.
Is that true?
How did India escape poverty?
I love the argument about, like, prove one time socialism has ever worked in a country, especially Latin American countries where, again, you grow up, you read a history book. There was no social experiment in Argentina that made it fail. And then at the same time, you look at a country like Finland, which has its own problems, but economically is arguably super socialist. And in every social metric, they're creaming us. They're killing the youth. Like, we're like so behind. You know, you can love this country. It's fine. But you gotta admit, we're so behind on something. We are unhealthy. We are not very well educated. We are violent. And yet here is, across the world, a socialist country who is achieving things way beyond what we are. Those examples exist too. And yeah, they pay a little bit more in taxes. They live better lives.
Compare Stalinist North Korea with capitalist South Korea.
As I checked, North Korea wasn't exactly like a premier socialist example. I feel like it's like the most fascist place in the world. Again, conflating two things that don't mean the same thing. Because South Korea probably has like a generally less restricted market, I guess. Does South Korea have free healthcare? It has a universal healthcare system, which means that all have access, but they're required to pay for it. Oh, okay. So they spend way less than us on it. Okay, as an example, I feel like the average socialist would argue that we really need to keep private insurance companies at bay. And we need some form of national insurance, so a lot of them propose a universal healthcare. South Korea has a universal healthcare program. So as a country who has a mixed economy thing going on in their healthcare system, at least it's better, right? And the only real difference is that they have a much more robust universal healthcare system, which most people would say is socialism. Right? So it's not a very good example for what he's talking about.
Anti-capitalists point to Sweden as an example of a country that embraced socialism and prospered, but that's completely wrong. Sweden only began to prosper in the mid-90s after it dumped socialism and embraced lower taxes and...
I mean, I kind of do this in my videos sometimes, but I try to include where the source is coming from. He kind of just posted like a random internet person's thoughts. This is like a poignant part of his argument, and he can't even cite the source.
Privatization. People who support socialism are also far greedier than those who support capitalism.
I know, dude. Aren't people so greedy for wanting to get paid relative to the work that they do? Aren't people so greedy that they think that they deserve healthcare? Dude, labor unions are so greedy. The CEO needs a yacht. Have any of you worked at a company that has a CEO? What do they do, right? How much harder does Jeff Bezos work on a daily basis to be worth millions of times the average Amazon driver who works all the time in pretty bad conditions? He came up with the company, of course, you know, he's gonna make more money than the average hourly worker at it. But the disparity is crazy because he's a greedy capitalist. Fucking knucklehead. I'll give you some final thoughts. Here's what I like about his content. It's very fast. I'm, in this video at least, rambling a lot. It's just that the argument doesn't make any fucking sense. He's appealing to people who really aren't truly interested in making society better. They just want to point at other people and call them the problem. Which, again, that's funny because I feel like when I watch these videos, that's what I would say about the other side. Not only is it riddled with misinformation, it's almost like if you took the past, 20-ish years of common knowledge within the country, and then you made an argument about that, and then you didn't include context from half of the other countries in the world, or any of the past fighting that people had to do in order to save themselves from the greedy. It just doesn't include any of that. It's just a small feel-good video. The fact that he puts them out over and over and over again makes them so easy to consume. It's slop. Someone needs to be out there making sure that kids get smart enough to not listen to this bullshit. I'm done. This is stupid. He's a retard.